braving the cold and the elements and getting through all the snow this morning, and I know it's not easy. And so again, I thank you and congratulate you. I just want to remind you all that we are one of over 120 communities across Canada that have come together today to send a message to the Harper government and the Canadian government that enough is enough, and that we can no longer sacrifice communities and Canada's biodiversity and the environment that we have in this country to continue to dig deep into bottom-of-the-barrel dirty energy across this country. Here in Alberta, we are home to the world's largest industrial project on the planet, Alberta's Tarsands, which is wreaking havoc on numerous communities, including my own. Henry is another community that is facing the consequences of bottom-of-the-barrel development. And what we're seeing the contamination of waterways, the contamination of animals and the biodiversity that many Indigenous communities still rely on for sustenance and to continue their cultural and treaty rights, which are supposed to be protected and upheld by the federal government. But along with the breaches of our treaties and our cultural rights, we are seeing the breaches of environmental legislation, the gutting of environmental law to allow out-of-control development, not just here in Alberta, but across Canada. We see fracking projects, we see coal projects. Enough is enough. It's time for this country and this government to stand up and take a stand, not just for the people here in this country, but for global climate change. Just this past week, we saw one of the largest storms in history to touch down in the Philippines and wreak havoc on that nation. It's a time for our governments to stand up because our country is leading the way to increasing global greenhouse gas emissions while the rest of the world is decreasing. It's time for our government to listen to the people and hear our words when we say enough is enough. So I want you to say everything. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. What do we want? Climate justice. What do we want? Climate justice. What do we want? Climate justice. When do we want it? Now. When do we want it? Now. Thank you. And I just want to explain what we have here today. The signs are a really good description, but here in this province, just this past winter, around this same time last year, the Alberta government and the Canadian Environmental Assessment Agency was reviewing an application from Shell Oil, one of the largest multinational corporations in the country, and one of the largest operators in Alberta's oil sands, besides Syncrude and Suncor. And they applied for an expansion of one of their existing projects. This expansion would increase their production from 200,000 barrels a day to 300,000 barrels a day. And that expansion would also mean the mining out of 21 kilometers of a river called the Muskeg River. It will mean the annihilation of critical habitat for species at risk, including wood bison and caribou. And it would also mean a serious increase in greenhouse gas emissions that is not just impacting here, us in Alberta, but the entire planet. And our nation, my nation, the Athabasca Chipewya First Nation, stood up and they said no to this corporation. They said no to the Canadian Environmental Assessment Agency, and they said no to the Alberta government, and they said enough is enough. We can no longer afford to increase tar sands production. We should be decreasing our reliance on oil and looking at alternatives. And instead, what we saw was the panel approve this project. However, this approval still needs the sanction of the federal government, and they have delayed their decision on it. And now we have the opportunity to send a message to the Canadian government and the Alberta government that we cannot afford this project, not just for our lives here in Alberta, but for the entire planet. So I just want to thank you all for being here and congratulate you all. And again, one more time, I just want to hear, what do we want? Climate justice! Where do we want it? Now! Thank you. Yeah. So I want to thank Crystal for making time to come. And I want to thank her for being one of my warrior sisters that is, taking up this fight with us because it's a big, big challenge. And we can't do it alone. And that's why it's so inspiring and overwhelming to see people brave the elements and come out on days like this to stand up, not just for climate change, but stand in solidarity with those that are being impacted. We were supposed to have a speaker speaker from the Philippines, and unfortunately he didn't make it. We were also supposed to have a speaker with Keepers of the Athabasca, Jesse Cardinal, who also could not make it because of the weather. However, their messages are about the need to continue to protect not only the communities that are being impacted by global climate change, but the environment and Mother Earth and our planet, and the future generations that come after us.
Of course.
Like Crystal, I have children, and I stand up and at these podiums and at the rallies, and to government officials, to corporate entities. I've stood before Shell numerous times to tell them that we no longer want their projects in our traditional territory. I have stood up to numerous different governments, and I do this not for myself and not for political gain, but because I want my children to have a future. We are in the 11th hour. If we don't do something, we will not be able to turn this around. I want my children to be able to know what it means to be a Dene person. I want them to know what it means to be on the land. I want them to know what a clean river looks like and what fresh air smells like. And right now we are headed on a trajectory that will mean that they will not know any of those things, and their children's children. I have no idea what the future looks like for them, but I pray and I hope that we can continue to stand together and send a message to the government and send a message to these corporations and say enough is enough. There is another way. Another way is possible, and you are a reminder that they have to take those directions and that we have to move in that direction. Our children, our children's children, the entire future of this planet lies in the hands of those with too much power. Masicho, thank you for all coming.
What do we want? What do we want?